Okay, first off, I want to acknowledge here that I'm 7 months pregnant, and that I don't know how many of you have been pregnant or have had pregnant spouses or partners, but pregnancy brain is a legit, real thing. So if I forget my words, please forgive me. I've got my notes. Okay, so I'm Kathleen Shannon, and I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit today about being your brand. I want to talk about how what started as a blog turned into me really creating my dream job. Let's see, can I? There, okay. So what happened was about 5 years ago, and I'll tell you my story, and then I'll go into a little more tips about building your brand and having a personal brand. But about 5 years ago, I was working as a senior art director at an advertising agency when my boyfriend and I bought an old historical home in downtown Oklahoma City. And I thought I would start a blog to document the project, to document the remodel. So I was blogging a lot about things like what couches I liked and light fixtures. And this was pre-Pinterest, so that would have been really helpful. But I was also blogging about things like my cat, Mr. Scooty Boots, or maybe what I was wearing that day. Now, I thought that maybe only my mom would read my blog, but it turns out that strangers were kind of interested in what I had to say also. And the first comments I got from people who weren't friends or family is whenever I painted my entire hallway in 9-inch wide black and white stripes, all Beetlejuice style. Now, everything I do is maybe a little bit off the beaten path. So whenever my man and I decided to get married in our little historical home, stripes and all, I had my brother, who is a Coney Island sideshow freak, who hammers nails into his head and swallows swords and breathes fire for a living, officiate the ceremony. So I'll let that sink in for a second. To match the quirky vibe of the wedding, I decided to design our own wedding invitations. And again, this is before the day of Pinterest, before these things were flooding the market. And of course, the blogger that I am, I posted about it. Now, the wedding itself ended up on the pages of Glamour Magazine's online blog. And my brother went on to officiate another ceremony in Brooklyn that landed in the pages of Martha Stewart Weddings. So let me just reiterate, if I can, that I ended up on Glamour's online blog, and my brother's in a Martha Stewart magazine. I was so jealous. But that's cool, because the invitations that I had designed started getting picked up by pretty big deal bloggers with huge audiences. In fact, Kelly featured some of my invitations once, and with that, I was attracting really cool offbeat brides and cool couples from all over the world. And they were asking me to design their invitations too. So I started doing that and ended up getting enough side projects to quit my day job in advertising. But even though I enjoyed this newfound independence and income, I still didn't really identify with being a wedding invitation designer. It wasn't entirely my bag. But something cool happened, because just like the rad brides that were finding me, other creatives, my tribe, started finding me too. Other bloggers, web designers, photographers, creatives, they were hiring me to help them too. So meanwhile, I'm still blogging. I'm blogging about everything. The house has been remodeled, and I'm blogging about what we're doing, what we're eating, where we're going. My favorite adventure to blog about was whenever my husband and I took a month-long trek through the Nepal Himalayas, all the way to Mount Everest Base Camp. But I was also blogging about this adventure in freelance. So I was sharing stationery design and brand identities that I was doing for other creatives. But I was also sharing the daily life, the behind the scenes, the struggles and insecurities that come with being your own boss for the first time ever. And I was also sharing the victories and successes along the way, like being able to work from a blanket in my backyard. That was pretty awesome. Now, just to give you some context, there are some big deal bloggers out there, people who are making millions a year in ad revenues and sponsorship, as we heard from Kelly Beal at designcrush.com. right? But then there's also really teeny tiny blogs with maybe 1 or 2 posts that never make their way out of Dear Diary land. Now, me, I don't know where I land with analytics. I'm probably not quite a rock star blogger that I'd like to think I am, but the readership that I have is really loyal and really engaged. So engaged, in fact, that whenever I was freelancing, I started receiving really heartfelt emails from other freelancers and creatives asking me how I do it. And so I started a series on my blog called Freelance Matters, where I was just giving stuff away. I was telling people everything from how I set up print specs and work with printers, to how I bid and estimate projects, how I bill clients, and even how I fire clients from hell. I was a little scared or resentful almost of giving away all my secrets for free. I thought, who's going to hire me if I give it all away? Or all these other designers are just going to come and learn everything I do and become my competition and take my job. But what I found is that by openly sharing all this knowledge, I was able to position myself as an authority on freelancing. So at some point I thought, isn't there like a freelancing and blogging for dummies book out there? Aren't there people who are just way more qualified to talk about these sorts of things than I am? But it turns out that my readers, they really wanted to hear it from me. And that's whenever I really started to embrace and understand what this business of personal branding is all about. So about 2 years ago, my sister quit her job in advertising. She was a creative director, and drank Kathleen Kool-Aid. I was like, come on in, the water's nice. And we decided to join forces. We essentially took what I did with Freelance Matters and created an entire business model out of it. We, on our own blog, share our insights and what we call our gifts of knowledge. Now, blogging and creating content has become such second nature to me that now I can decide which content I want to charge people for. So through things like e-courses and digital products. But I'm still blogging. My sister and I are still sharing these free gifts of knowledge on our website. And what we think that this positions us as likable experts. Now, I think that the word expert makes a lot of creatives really uncomfortable. But whenever I say expert, what I really mean is a guide who has focus and a point of view. And whenever I say likable, I'm not talking puppies and rainbows and the overuse of exclamation marks. Likable simply means believable, reassuring. Okay, so now all this blogging and personal branding business might seem a bit like where narcissism meets voyeurism, but really for me, it's been about connecting. I've been able to connect with dream clients from all over the world. This is May Jensen, who's an executive coach from Denmark, who found me to help her overhaul her personal brand. She had a super bubbly online presence and was not attracting the right kind of audience. And it turns out that she was much more of a rebel. And then along with connecting me with dream clients, blogging has connected me with my own personal heroes. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Brené Brown. Do you guys know? Okay, so Brené Brown is a researcher and author, and she has an amazing TED Talk. You'll have to watch it, with over 8 million views on vulnerability. So literally, if you Google Brené Brown vulnerability, it changed my life. And so I bought her book, Daring Greatly, and I did a review of it on my blog. I tweeted it, Brené saw it, she read the post. Whenever she tweeted, responded at me, I was like, oh my gosh, Brené Brown tweeted at me. Well, about a month later, I saw an email in my inbox from her, and she said, I need help. I love what you guys do. My online presence, my personal brand is not being reflected the way it should be, and I'm going on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday in a month. Can you help me? I was like, yes, I can. So it was so surreal to be Skyping with Brené Brown, my own personal hero, and in the middle of our Skype session, Oprah called her on the phone. I was so excited, and I couldn't wait to tell my dad. I was like, Dad, guess what happened? And to this day, he still thinks that Oprah is one of my clients. But along with connecting me to these dream clients, blogging has also connected me to online friends, other bloggers, other dream job makers, and other oversharers. So lately I've been traveling offline to connect with these people too, and stuff like this. So believe it or not, this isn't me partying poolside, not pregnant. This is actually me networking with 50 other graphic designers and bloggers in Palm Springs, California. And what we've been doing online with this sharing of knowledge and information, we've taken offline too. So what turned out as a little blog about my life turned into this dream job in which I found my tribe and my expertise. By blending the personal with the professional, I was able to create the story of my life, which has become interesting and memorable and never boring, which is what a brand is all about. And yeah, I still sometimes photograph my outfits. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about actual tips on capturing, shaping, and sharing your brand and blending who you are with what you do. So whenever it comes to personal branding, sometimes it's just as simple as sharing your story. And so these stories can be a little more memoir style, or they can simply be how-to advice through the lens of your own personal experience. Some of my favorite stories to read and write for myself are some of the, let's get real here, day in the life of what it's like to be a working creative. So whenever you authentically start sharing yourself online, you will, and you get really pointy with your point of view, you will automatically start attracting your people, your tribe. And what I want people to do whenever they land on my blog is I want to give them permission to either love me or hate me. But I want them to know as fast as possible and as quickly as possible where they stand and whether or not they belong. So I think a lot of us are afraid of sharing online because we're afraid of offending someone, or we're afraid of that rejection or being made fun of. But if you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're just going to water down who you are and what you really have to say. So I say, write for your fans and forget about the critics. And it's probably important to note here that the critics are probably just in your head whenever it comes down to it. A lot of the creatives I work with and coach always say, I want to share more online, but I'm so afraid of what everybody will think. I'm like, who's everybody? Name 5 people. Name 5 people that you're afraid of saying something about what you have to say. And usually they're like, well, I can't name anybody, but just people. I'm like, all right, start writing. One of my favorite, best, closest friends, she's really sarcastic and dry and witty and has this kind of dark sense of humor. And she was really excited to start a blog sharing her life, and I was really excited to read it because she's just one of my favorite people, and she's hilarious. And she started blogging and writing things like, oh my God, you guys, I just adore this bath mat. What do you think, lovelies? And she was being for real. I was like, what happened to my sarcastic friend? Where are you? And so like Kelly was saying about finding your voice, a lot of that's just about using your words, using your own words. And this happens with a lot of the creative entrepreneurs that I work with also. Whenever they decide to start integrating more of what they do and how to hire them on their personal blog, they start sounding really vague, or they start using a lot of jargon or generic words like quality, value, communications. Even branding can be pretty vague at times. They start sounding like robots. So what I'm suggesting is just to say what you mean and use your own words. Like maybe even just write a list of the words you say all the time and start bringing them into your content. So this is a pretty obvious one, but whenever you consistently capture, shape, and share who you are, you will attract your people. And consistency can come in the form of frequency. A lot of the things that Kelly touched on are probably lumped into being consistent. Having blog topics, the amount of time that you update, probably even using certain hashtags on Twitter. And it can also be as simple as using the same filter every time on Instagram. These are the sorts of things that are going to give you consistency. And consistency in branding whenever it comes like personal or professional, branding is really about setting an expectation and then delivering on that promise. So being consistent is really just how you deliver on that. Okay, so whenever I decided to fashion my hair into dreadlocks, I was terrified that my sister, like that I was never going to get hired again, and that my sister's children would starve through a long and cold winter because I've decided to be a weirdo with my hair. But what I found is that even our most conservative clients, really, they were like, yeah, go figure. Like, we would expect nothing less of you. And it really, if anything, helped make us maybe a little bit more memorable. But it was something I was really scared to do. And by being brave and being who I am, it really started to pay off. So speaking of paying off, but people won't hire me if. I think a lot of folks are afraid of sharing who they are online, sharing more of their personality, because they're afraid it won't come off as professional. But here's the deal. Especially in this new U economy, where more and more people are becoming freelancers and contractors and not working for the man, people like hiring other people, flaws and all. So I'm not telling you that you need to go dread your hair or cover your body in tattoos, but I bet if you did, you might double your income. All right, so whenever I was working with Brene Brown, I was hanging out with her, trying to wrap up her website in her living room, and it was funny because I was also in my first trimester. Like, I kept on thinking I was going to throw up in Brene Brown's bathroom. I was like, please don't let me throw up in my hero's bathroom. But I asked her if she had any advice for bloggers for sharing who they are and not being afraid, having courage. And she said this. She said, know your line. She said, share what is vulnerable, but not what is intimate. And that just really stuck with me. So I think that a lot about having a personal brand and sharing that online is really about knowing your boundaries, drawing that line, but also knowing that that line will evolve and change, and that you should evolve and change with it. So that's all I got. I should mention Mr. Scooty Boots, because every time I rehearse this with my husband, he's like, but who is that kitty cat? So that's Mr. Scooty Boot. I'm still blogging about him, too. He's got his own little personal brand on my blog. And yeah, that's it. So I'm curious to hear if you guys have any questions or, yeah.